Yeah. Welcome everybody to the Arkatech Beatz Music Business Podcast. We are your hosts, platinum producers, Arkatech Beatz. I am Juggernaut.
I am Mike Trauma D.
And we are collectively the production team of Arkatech Beatz. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome to the channel. We want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend. Get that out the way. Every week we get together and we discuss music industry, music business topics for producers, independent songwriters, and musicians. We like to just give a little bit of game every week.
Yes, sir.
So welcome to the channel.
Welcome.
You know, we like to just talk about some of the topics that we see on the internet. Sometimes people send us some topics. So if you like something or you have something that you have a question about, just feel free to reach out to us, right?
Definitely. Reach out to us, DM us.
Twitter.
Whatever.
Instagram, Facebook, whatever. So let's get into this, man. Like there was something floating around the internet. You sent me something. That's something that I've been wanting to that I see often. And it was
man. Before we even go, man, like we touched on this before, man. Be careful where you're getting your information from, man. Be careful where you're getting your information from. We talked about this on another podcast. Just be careful, man. There's a lot of bad information out there. There's a lot of people out there trying to give you bogey game, fake game. It ain't official, man. And they steering you in the wrong direction. And you guys got to be very careful of who you listen to and what type of information you apply to the moves that you're making to your career. So with that being said, let's move forward.
It's real, like, you know, but it's real because the best way to put it, let's get into what the situation is. But so what we saw was some information floating around on the internet about, you know, if you're a new producer and the scenario was if you're a new producer and an established artist reaches out to you and you know wants your music and wants you to send the stems for your music. For those who don't understand,
the stems to record.
The stems to record your music.
That was
the key here, right? The stems to record. And for those who don't understand what the stems mean, like when you're doing production, you break out the instruments into individual tracks, or what they would call stems. So you would have the hi-hats, the kicks, the samples, the pianos, the chords,
different parts.
The different parts of the song broken out into stems. And then once you send these folks your stems, they're able to basically have control or manipulate, you know, what they want to bring in and out of the mix or in and out of the song, so forth and so on. So the question was, do you send your stems if a high-level tier artist calls you in the middle of the night, says they want to use your music, they want to record your music, but they need you to send the stems? Do you send the stems? And the answer that they were saying overwhelmingly in some of these platforms was that, yeah, send the stems. And, you know, send the stems and, you know, just hope for the best.
Yeah, man, and one of the arguments was, you know, and this argument kind of like just took me back. You know, you take risks, and hey, we all take L's now and then. You know, yeah, we do take L's now and then, but you don't just walk into a situation without doing any type of research. You don't just walk into an L just because we all take L's now and then. You know, I found that disturbing and, quite frank, you know, not good information to give. You know, luckily there were a lot of people online that was actually jumping in saying this is bad information. You know, you don't just walk into a L or loss. You don't just like. It's like it just bugged me out that someone would say that, you know, that you just walk into a L, that you know what could happen, and you could just say, you know what, let me just risk it all. Let me just, with no protection for yourself at all.
It was really concerning to me. Like when I say like really, really concerning, like to the point where it was like, yeah, sometimes we have to work for free. Like, listen, I get all of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, sometimes, but you don't have to, right? You can work for free, but you don't have to. And, I understand, like, if you want the record to change, this record could change your life.
But, right? Doug, before you go there, when you said work for free, working for free is more of a choice. And when you put yourself in these positions, they're removing your choice. They're saying, "Oh, you're gonna have to work for free." They're removing your. There's a difference between me saying, "You know what, we're gonna do the business right," and I'm choosing that I'm gonna work for free, but I have that choice. Not your choice was taken away from you. Not someone saying, "You know what, we're taking this, and we're giving you nothing." There's a difference.
But that's the position you put yourself in when you send them stems.
Exactly.
When you send those, once you send those stems, you've effectively released your master.
Right. You're giving up your leverage.
Right. Now, what can you do to protect yourself? Right. Because at the end of the day, you're in a situation where, hey, you do want to do something that can help to change your life, right? Because let's say, say this is a Drake calling, right? Drake calling in the middle of the night, hey, man, send me these stems, man. I need these stems so I can kind of get this mixer where I want to get it, and I want to record this song. Do you not send the stems? You send the stems, right? You're gonna send the stems. But what I would tell folks is when you send the stems, you're supposed to send the stems. And you're supposed to have something inside of your communication to say, hey, that we're going to negotiate something at a later date. Or if you're going to send your stems, while you're sending your stems, we should be sending your information to the copyright office at the same time.
Right.
So you should be copywriting your song when you're sending them stems. And you should be putting yourself in a position so that if you come back and you say, hey, I want to use X amount of dollars, and they can tell you, well, they can kind of give you the rigmarole, you will have some sort of protection in place so that you can basically pursue legal action if you need to.
Right. And immediately get your attorney involved. Right. Get your attorney up, let them know what you're doing.
Right.
So that they could advise you of some other things that you can do behind the scenes to further protect yourself.
But also, too, for you to have a record and a timestamp of the events.
Yes.
You don't know how important it is for you to have records and timestamps of events. These things matter when we're talking about copyright infringement or stolen tracks and stuff like that, or tracks that you don't get credit for. If you don't have timestamps, if you don't have information about when the communication took place, when you send the stems, all of these different things. If you don't have these things in place, you're basically impeding your ability to have any leverage when it's time for you to say, hey, I want to get something for this music. So you don't have to be for free, like you said.
So to be specific, we're talking about email communication, text message communications, DMs. All those things need to be recorded or screenshot,
captured, cataloged,
and saved somewhere, so that you can always use that as reference. God forbid if things go in the wrong direction, you could go back to those things along with your copyright, along with everything else, your communication, all of these things that you need to protect yourself. Blindly just sending your stems, I wouldn't recommend it. Not saying that in some instances, the artist doesn't do their part, because what you're doing is you're leaving it up to the artist or their peoples. It's really their peoples to do whatever. You're hoping that they will do the right thing, and in this business, that's not always the case.
And this business, things fall between the cracks,
right?
And some of it is intentional.
Mm-hmm.
and some of it isn't. But it's going to be very hard for you to differentiate between the two. Who's intentionally leaving you off? Who's intentionally deciding not to pay you? You know, who's
Right.
intentionally not giving you credit versus, oh, that was a mistake and this person didn't do it or this person didn't do that. They didn't do their job or they do their due diligence. So I'm with you in unison in saying, hey, you know, if I'm going to say, hey, you want the stems? Okay, I can send you these stems. You know, I'm going to send you these stems for right now that, you know, but hopefully we'll be able to talk about, you know, payment options and credits and stuff like that at a later date. And you have to make sure that folks are understanding that you're sending the stems on those type of conditions. You haven't negotiated yet, so you haven't you know, your rights are still reserved. And then to give an extra layer of protection is, I would always suggest, rush copyright your music.
Normally, in a perfect world, you know, the artist records over the MP3, you know, the 2-track, you know. So when an artist usually says, or artist representative, it's not usually the artist themselves. It's usually like a representative, an A&R, someone from the label, a manager, an engineer. Usually, they could record the record over a 2-track. And it's good enough for them to get an idea of how the record is going to sound. They really don't need the stems to record a record. So they record over the 2-track, and they decide, okay, this record is hot. We're going to use this. Now we want to maybe mix it so that we can get to a certain quality, ready for radio and promotion and those things. And those things happen actually after they already have an idea of how they're putting out the album or whatever the case is, and then they'll contact you for those things. They will normally send over some sort of paperwork so that they can get the stems. You know, a deal memo or something of that case. They'll send something over, just like a first contact type of paper or something, so that there's some type of communication between you, and the label. And that will be the beginning of being able to send them the stems. Usually anything before paperwork is usually like, you got to be very careful and really think about if sending your stems, which is your master, because once it's gone, they could do whatever. It's gone. They could do whatever they want. They could cut communication with you and put their own producer on it, and that's it. And you have no recourse. If you don't have a copyright already in place, if you don't have any type of proof, it's going to be very hard to fight for what's yours, you know, and it happens a lot, you know.
Or the other thing, which is probably a little bit more sinister, is they take a portion of your stems to recreate the track.
Yeah.
And then ice you out totally.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that happens often. You know what I mean? Where
I've seen it. I've seen the in-house producers recreate. They get something and they have the in-house producers recreate the record.
Yep.
And you're out the picture. They have the stems.
Yep. And once you have the stems, they make it so much easier for them to recreate what you got going on.
Yeah. And I saw something about somebody said, well, keep your tag in the melody. And it's like, you guys really don't understand that once the stems are out, they can manipulate any part of the record to whatever they feel. They could remove those things. You know, they could sample the 4-bar, 8-bar loop, and then they're good with that.
Crazy, boy, crazy.
Yeah, and I'm just so surprised that, you see, what happens is, you know, people are in desperate situations. I understand, you know, and that could affect the way, you know, people do business. And a lot of these artists, and I don't even want to say artists because sometimes it's not even them, but it's the people that's around them that's contacting producers or so on. They pry on your desperation, you know. They pry on your wanting to work with, you know, someone big and changing your life. So when they come and they tell you these things, you're so, oh, I gotta get this, and then you could make the wrong decision that could just, screw things up for you. Like, can you imagine like giving up your stems and they flip it, they take it, and it goes triple platinum, the biggest hit record, and you're not credited, you're not nothing. There's somebody else's name on it, and you can't even prove it that it's yours because they got it, they copyrighted it after the fact, they did this, they did that.
You don't got a legal leg. You don't have a legal leg to stand on because you haven't protected yourself. Like, you have to protect yourself. I get it. You have to take some risks, right? But you can protect yourself. There's a calculated risk that you can take, right? And the calculated risk is, okay, we're going to send you these stems, but let me tell you, I'm sending you these stems. First in the communication, you're laying at the ground. I'm sending these stems with that we'll be discussing, options and stuff. Discussing the credits and payment and so forth and so on at a later date. That's the first thing that we have to put inside our communication.
Right.
That we're letting them know that, listen, I'm not giving you this music for free.
Right. And you carbon copy your lawyer.
And you're CCing your lawyer, or you're CCing, I'm just letting you know I'm sending you these stems. All rights are still reserved. These are still my joint. That under the condition that we're going to be talking about, credits and payment and stuff like that at a later date after the song is completed. And then you can send your joint off, and then you're supposed to be immediately contacting your folks, letting your folks know what time it is. You're supposed to be taking all type of capturing all of the communication, right, and cataloging that so that you have that for future use. And then also, you're supposed to be sending out something to the copyright.gov. Remember what happens is that under the statute right now with the Copyright Office, you cannot sue for copyright infringement if you don't have it registered with copyright.gov. They've made that extra step into it that it needs to be copyrighted. Can you copyright it after the fact? You can copyright it after the fact that it's released, but it's going to drastically reduce your punitive your punitive damages that you can receive. So you'll be able to get more if it's copyrighted prior to when it's actually released.
Well, that's even if they even admit that it's yours or anything like that.
Well, at that point, they wouldn't have to. You know what I'm saying? Like you would be able to have the communication. So you'll be able to have the times of when you send the stems.
Yeah, that's all you have. Yeah.
And then if the songs are similar, and then of course they can do kind of an audit or forensic situation where they can compare the songs, and then also if you have your copyright in place, then it can put you in a position that you may be able to win any litigation. And most folks don't want to go through that. Most folks, once they see that you got the copyright, once you shoot them that you got the copyright, and they and then you shoot them the communication that you were sending the songs to them, and they have the stems, and you have the proof of that. Most folks are gonna see that that's gonna be worth more than it needs to be, and they'll try to get it taken care of. But if you don't have those things, you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah, and don't be fooled. It happens. It happens often.
And don't fall for that situation where it's a copyright because I created it at 10:21 on a Sunday. It's an automatic copyright, and then I'm protected. All right.
Go ahead and believe that.
Yeah, go ahead and believe that.
You see what happens.
See if you're going to win your case with that. See if a lawyer will take your case with that. That's really what it boiled down to. And folks ain't taking the case. They're like, yeah, it's a copyright for you, brother, but they ain't taking that case for you. They're not going to be able to pursue anything for you to get any recourse.
They got to be registered and logged in a third party.
You know what I'm saying? This is how we lose, people. I keep saying that. This is how we lose. We lose because of no information. This is how we lose all the time. This is how we get exploited all the time. It's because they say, hey, you get the copyright, so nobody goes and does it has an automatic copyright. You should see how much places that I go on the internet, how many forums I go into, and producers say, oh yeah, there's an automatic copyright once you produce the record. That doesn't protect you. If somebody takes your music, it doesn't protect you. It doesn't give you legal recourse. Wow. It doesn't. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't. You know what I'm saying? It's an idea of protection, but it's not true protection. It's kind of like saying, hey, you got car insurance, but you really don't have car insurance.
Right.
Either you have it or you don't. You know what I'm saying?
So if you're hell bent on sending your stems because you're scared of losing the opportunity, if that's your position and you're going to send it, take those steps to protect yourself. You know,
that's all we're saying. We're not saying don't take the opportunity.
Right.
Because opportunity is a scarce in this business. We're not saying that.
We're not saying don't take the risk, but your risk has to be calculated. Your risk needs to have, okay, if things go wrong, am I going to be asked out at the end of the day, or is there some sort of a safety net somewhere that I can pull on? You know, because again, it would be heartbreaking if you gave out your stems and they cut all communication after that. You can't get nobody. You be calling, you're emailing, you're texting. You can't get nobody on the phone. And then come to find out a month later, that record is number one somewhere. Videos all over, everybody in the club dancing to it, and you're screaming in your corner in your basement somewhere. Like, that's my beat. You're gonna need proof. You're gonna need a lot of things to really say it's yours. And I've even seen somebody in the comments said that they took the risk and they sent it out and they got the placement. But when people ask, well, what was the placement? You know, mum's the word. You know, they're quiet because they didn't get the credit. They didn't get the credit. So if you don't get the credit, then and your name is not on the record, you didn't do the record. You know,
right? Like you didn't do the record. Like,
I don't get. You could say it. Right. You could say you did the record, but you didn't do the record. Sorry,
you didn't do the record. So one, you're not going to get paid on the back end. You're not going to be able to collect any hardware.
Yeah.
If your name ain't on the record, you can't collect any hardware.
You ain't gonna get them shiny things on the wall.
You ain't gonna get them shiny things on the wall. Like if you ain't on the record, you can't get them. So that's a fact. Like if your name ain't on the record, if your company ain't on the record, you can't get them.
So you could sit around and say and feel good about, hey, my record was good enough to be this, but it don't count. It don't count when your name ain't on it. It don't. Sorry to say, and there are producers right now that are crying because they didn't take the necessary steps to protect themselves. They were part of records, huge records, and they weren't able to cash in any way. Their names were on the record. They had no legal recourse because they didn't protect themselves, and they're just asked out, you know. And I'm not saying that this will happen with the artists that you deal with. There are artists and there are situations where you could risk it all and they'll do the right thing. But that's not a practice that we would recommend, that you just risk it all and with no way to protect yourself, because you're putting your life in somebody else's hands. You're putting your livelihood, you're putting everything in somebody else's hands, hoping that they'll do the right thing. And time after time, that's not always the case, whether it's directly or indirectly, if it's on purpose or not. Some things fall through the cracks. The wrong type of people get involved. Anything can happen. So all we're saying at the end of the day is, if you're deciding to send your stems out, if you're deciding to do these things, you have to protect yourself. You should protect yourself. If you don't, then you're leaving it up to whatever. And whatever happens, happens.
Whatever happens for real. like for real. Like, and we're not saying it from a standpoint of not knowing. We're saying it from a standpoint of where once you send stems, things get tricky.
Yeah. It gets very, very tricky because you're giving your masters up. That's the master, you know, and you're giving up your power. You're giving up your negotiating power. You know, if you're negotiating with a label and you already gave up the master, you know, your power is pretty much gone. You know, so they could say, hey, we're just going to give you this. We're going to give you this. And you're kind of at the losing end. You know, you don't have anything tangible to negotiate with once you give it away.
So I'm going to recap. We said a lot. If you get hit up by an artist to send you stems, first thing you want to do is, if you're sending your stems, if you've made the decision to send your stems,
if you made the decision to send,
if you made the decision that this is going to be a life-altering, changing artist, that this song may change my life, and I'm going to take this risk, and you're going to send those stems, you want to make sure that you put into your communication when you're sending those stems that you are still reserving your rights, and that you expect the negotiation for compensation and royalties, etc., to take place at a later date. All right? You want to that's the first step when you're sending your communication. The second thing you want to make sure that you're doing is that you're CCing your legal counsel if you have one. That you whenever you're sending that communication out and letting them know that all your rights are reserved, you want to make sure that you are CCing your legal counsel. But what that helps to do is that helps to timestamp and date when you sent the master, because you now are releasing your master.
And it puts the recipient who's getting the email on notice.
On notice
that we have our legal team on deck.
Right. So if you do any shenanigans, they're coming. Right. Now you take the third step to protect yourself, which is now you want to make sure that you save and archive any communications from said artists.
Yep.
Right. Fourth thing that you want to do after that is make sure that you're immediately getting that record registered for copyright.gov.
I would actually, Jug, make that the number one thing before I even send out any communication back. The moment there's interest on the record, I'm handling that.
Copyright it.
Right away.
I agree with that.
Handle that right away. Don't even delay.
So let's reverse that. Copyright it first.
Do it, yeah.
Then we go.
Right.
Then because you can copyright it online. Now some folks will say, well, what if they want the record right now? I'm in the studio now. I need it right now.
Yeah, that's some real, like. I always have a problem when people try and get you to do things quickly.
So you know, make a mistake.
When people be like, hurry up! We got to do this now. You have to be very, very careful of those things, because you can make a mistake. Immediately get on a computer, copyright, send it off, because this thing it's digital. You could do it online.
You can do it online.
So if you're getting that type of call, you could take a moment, get up, get on the computer, boom, 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 send it off, attach your joint, send it off, and pay whatever you got to pay or whatever, send it off, and you're copyrighted, you're saved on that note.
I'll even take it a step further and say, hey, make sure you put all those records that's in the same batch that you sent that artist.
Right. So if you sent the artist a beat pack of maybe 10 beats, and that was one of the records that they chose, you could actually put that same beat pack in a folder to get the whole pack copyrighted. Just make sure that you have a list of the beats in that for that pack.
Any music in that artist's possession at that point has to be copyrighted. Right.
That would be the safe thing to do.
Because things change.
Yeah.
We're releasing this, and then we release that.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game. All right, folks. So just making sure folks is paying attention now. Hoping not preaching to the choir. I think a lot of our episodes, are around this topic, man, and it's this copyright thing, man. Folks are really taking it for granted. They don't really understand. Like, hey, don't take this copyright thing for granted. This copyright thing is, it can save your life.
Right. But the other thing, Jug, is we didn't really go into if you're one of the producers that's saying that I'm not sending my stems, there is a respectable way of doing that. You just simply communicate to the person hitting you up, saying that you would prefer some documentation or something some type of deal memo or invoice, something, before you release your stems. I see some nice language being used in regard to that. I say, hey, I would prefer this to, I prefer something to be sent from the label to that you are in use of this material. There's different things that could be said before you decide that you're going to send your stems out. Like I said, back in the days, you wouldn't send your stems unless you got something from the label saying, hey, we're interested in this. This is an invoice, and you got something back of what's called the deal memo, which would have it's like a pre-contract. It's like an intent to use. So if having something like that before sending out your stems is the normal and the proper way to do the business.
And you would get your first half.
Yeah.
Because, in those days, you had to, in order for them to do the record, you had to go in and lay down your stems.
Right.
So at least you would get the first half of your producer's fee up front after you did that.
Right.
Now with the use of 2 tracks and MP3s, that changed the landscape, so it makes it a lot more difficult for you to get that first half, if at all anymore. So,
but it's funny, Jug. There are situations where they don't even
don't even tell you they're recording your record,
or they don't ask for the stems.
That's a whole nother story.
They'll record the 2 track, and if your mix is good enough, they'll just keep that. And we've been in situations where we didn't even need to give up the stems. The mix was good enough. They recorded it and said, hey, we want to use your record, and we'll do the business, just based on that. and they send the paperwork through without giving up the stems. And that just goes to show how the business has changed, and because of technology, it differs. And I think that's what makes it so difficult and confusing when it comes to some of these rules, because technology has done so many things. It's sped up things, and it's hard to keep up with technology and the way things are done. The same way business is done 5 years ago, 10 years ago, is not the same as it's done now, as far as the steps that are taken into creating a record and handling the business. Now it's kind of all over the place, because technology allows you to just record a record without the stems needed. So who has the master then? You know what I'm saying? If an artist records a 2 track, what is considered the master? Do you still have the physical master? You didn't give up the master, right? Technically, but contractually, whatever they recorded on it would be considered the master. So it's a lot of gray areas. When you start really going into the literature, the technicalities behind it.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Protect yourself, man.
Protect yourself at all times, folks.
Yes, sir.
Like, you guys out there, please protect yourself. I hate to see producers, especially new producers, being taken advantage of. I don't like it.
Absolutely.
And that's another reason for this forum, is to make sure that you know how to protect yourself so you're not being taken advantage of.
Definitely.
Switching gears.
Let's see. Anything new going on?
Versus.
Fat Joe versus Ja Rule.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
Joe is home team, man. So you're not gonna, you ain't got really too much to say. You see the Big Pun plaque on the wall. My Big Pun plaque is over that wall and the other one. So Big Pun forever. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna be biased to Joey Crack. And I'm from the BX. So all day BX stand up.
Right.
But listen. For those who think that Ja Rule is not a heavyweight, Ja Rule's a heavyweight, man. the songs that he wrote are timeless classics, and he had a lot of them shits. Okay, he had a lot of them shits, and it was like he was on stage with an AR-15, man.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And you know, Crack is no slouch, but the level of Ja Rule's hits, you know, one of the bigger records for Joe was written by Ja Rule, which is What's Love with Ashanti.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, okay.
So you can kind of see how this matchup was a little lopsided, but when you kind of peel back the layers of the whole situation, it was essentially one artist trying to give their flowers to giving the other artists an opportunity to get their flowers and give them that stage.
That's dope.
Because it's real G shit. But because no one was going to give Ja Rule his platform. No one was going to go on stage with him. No one was going to take that beating. Because it was a beating. You know, like I said, Joe tried to stand his own. Some of the records that Joe had, you would say are classics in their own right, but not to the caliber of a Ja Rule. Like Ja Rule's caliber of classic is more radio, more well renowned. Whereas if you're a hip hop head, then you would say, okay, I know what the Flo Joes are, or the Don Cartagena songs with Diddy. You know, like you would have to be a fan of Joe to know what those records are. And if you're not a fan on the surface, you're like, why would he play these against that?
Right, right. There's a discussion that Ja like the whole singing song rap, they're trying to say that he's responsible for that type of music, like the rapper that's kind of singing.
I agree. I agree with that. That he created a lane. You know, he created a lane of adding that kind of song to it and making it more melodic and so forth and so on. But come on, man, we're talking about a lot of hit records. Like he played at least 3 or 4 records with Jay-Z, records with DMX. We're not even getting into those. And those are the hard records, right? The ones that were supposed to be part of that Murder Inc. project. The murder. So it's one of those type of things where it's like, I thought it was a decent versus. Some folks felt like it wasn't as entertaining as they wanted it to be. The back and forth between them was funny. Joe was calling.
I heard about
calling him Dusty.
I heard about that. That's
then he got him out of a crack house.
That's messed up. That's so.
It was more because it was just in the heat of the moment because Ja was on his ass, like what I'm saying. After Ja bought out Vita and Little Mo, start doing that. What would I be without you? That shit. He was feeling away. He was like, God damn, that shit was like a fucking headshot. So. He had to say something like, feed, like, you need to feed them, because, listen, Vita came out with the 6-pack and the whole 9, so it was like, he's like, you gotta feed them, but she's little, you know what I mean? She's always been a little, tiny, saying, you gotta feed them girls, what I'm saying? They're not like my girls, so
Wow.
and
Oh, wow.
And he got, like Remy held him down heavy Remy.
Of course.
Like, man, like that she's like Superwoman for Joe right now.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Remy, man.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So she did the twins for Pun and did Pun's parts and
that's dope.
Yeah, did the deep cover on them, the twin shit. Then, ended it off with the lean back. And then they did the New York record, brought out Kiss. Ended it off. So it was the highest rated verses of all time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
It must have been them international Ja Rule fans, man. Don't sleep, man. Keep telling people like, hey, man, don't sleep on this guy. This guy's the heavyweight. And then, I noticed now, they want to listen to Ja Rule in the house now. I'm like, okay. They're listening to the joints now because they're like, yo, I miss these records.
Right.
Because what your man had did effectively is he made it not cool to listen to these records.
Mm-hmm.
But now that all of that's over, you're like, nah, these records are dope.
Right.
You know, and you know,
people forget too. People forget.
Listen here, it's easy to forget. It's easy to forget that.
That's dope. That you have things like a Versus. You have things like the Drink Champs. Shout out to those guys. That gives the artists of the day, like they shine, like that they should get. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people forget. You got young kids who just don't know, and it's dope. It's dope. And then what happens is these records, especially on the streaming platforms, they come back on the forefront. They rediscovered.
Resurgence, man.
Yeah. So that these records, like, they don't die, and it continues to feed. It continues to create opportunities, and it continues to inspire. Which is key. And when you do dope records, when you do good records, man, and when they say timeless, like when you want to make these records, that's what you want to do, man. You want to make sure that you want to make timeless records so that they stick around, and they'll have resurgence, decade after decade, legacy.
Joe said yesterday's hits are not today's hits. Right?
Uh-huh.
And then Josh said, no, they're not today's hits. They're called classics. Right? So he kind of got him on that. But, excuse me, to me get in my Joe's voice. Yesterday's price is not today's price. And I hope he trademarks that shit, because
it goes right back to trademarking and copywriting. It goes right back.
Because that shit is that is really what's going on right now. Yesterday's price is not today's price. The talk was now of JD and Diddy getting on the verses. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to say, Swiss, Timberland, if you guys are thinking about putting JD and Diddy together, it's not the right matchup. If you're trying to put together a concert now, JD and Diddy, which is a So Def versus Bad Boy and special guests, and you're trying to put together a concert, okay, that makes sense.
Right.
But let's not call it a versus.
Maybe it's sponsored by Versus.
Yeah, right. Let's not call that a versus, because they was trying to get Diddy on the line. They got Diddy on the live, and Diddy was like, come on, your arms is too short to box with God, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
So part of it, you can see there's a little chip on Diddy's shoulder saying, "Listen, you're really not you're not really on my level."
I think Diddy is a slight bit annoyed because they've done that comparison with Diddy and Jermaine forever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's not a fair comparison.
And if you look at the body of work and what it's done, like it's lopsided, like just between Big and Mary alone, like some of those records, not just the content, not just the campaign, not just the videos, but sonically, like, man, like it's a whole package.
Be honest, man. Like, be honest. So people are not being honest when we talk about this stuff. Be honest in saying that it changed the course of music.
Absolutely,
it changed the course of music. Let's be honest. When we saw Juicy and Big Papa, right? When we saw the visuals, right? Because now what we've now been introduced to the Hype Williams era.
Yes.
People seem to forget that. Like now this is now everything now is Hype Williams now. The warnings, everything now, because
that hypnotized videos. Good Lord.
Come on. Like they're not realizing what Diddy did to music back then. It was like a vice grip around music. And the only other label that was doing what they was going to do that way at that time is going to be Death Row.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I know Dre might not want to really shine light on that era of Death Row.
Because that was a dark time for him.
Right.
Also, yeah.
But he built that shit too.
Yep.
He should be able to celebrate his contribution to it. It's not all negative.
And get his flowers, man.
And get his flowers. So if you ask me, that's the better versus. If you want to throw a party, you get JD and you get, that's the internet party right there. You get JD, you get Diddy, you do the classics back and forth. You put Usher on the stage for Jermaine on certain joints, and then he'll do certain joints with Diddy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Now probably the only thing is with Diddy, he kind of goes between R&B and hip hop. So does
Jermaine though.
But Dr. Dre
doesn't
really, So that may be, something right there also. Unless, it'd be kind of crazy, Chuck. Diddy versus Dre and JD. I'm just saying. I'm just talking.
But Dre ain't going on stage with JD.
Yeah, that's true. Sure.
Dre ain't doing that. You know what I'm saying? But think about it. Dre will be able to bring out 50. He'll be able to bring out Eminem.
Okay.
He'll be able to bring out Snoop.
But you know so then it would also be something he didn't directly produce.
Because Diddy's the same way. Diddy's basically going to be on an executive production standpoint. Okay. It's not going to be all producing. And I think that's the angle that Jermaine wants it to be. He wants it to be all the records that I produce because he physically produced those records.
Right.
So in his mind, he's saying like I'm better because I put in that work. I did it.
Right.
I was in it. I did it. But you can't take away from Diddy being behind the scenes and orchestrating some of the greatest music of a generation. The Jodeci's, the Father MC, the you know what I mean,
Faith, Mary,
the Little Kim,
112.
Come on.
Even that the season when he came out with the Carl Thomas records.
Listen, he didn't want to talk. He said like he didn't even want to bring the Carl Thomas on him. So and then JD would not play a record. That's what really hurt me. Like they was asking JD in that live for almost an hour, play a record.
Man,
he wouldn't play it. And then Diddy had to start playing his records for him. Like Diddy had to play the records for him. Like these are your records that you gonna play against me. You gonna play Crisscross? What you gonna play? You gonna play Jump? Like you know what I mean? And then JD was like, when I would make Crisscross, you wasn't even making nothing. You wasn't even in the game yet. Like listen, like all that don't matter.
Don't matter.
You know what I'm saying? Like all that don't matter. So that was the
wow, man, wow.
So I thought that was interesting in itself.
Yo, a Diddy versus man will be freaking a party, man. A party, like, gee whiz. That would be special.
And I think that's the angle that Swiss and Timbo trying to take. They're trying to take it like, the party aspect of it, the concert aspect of it. That's what make that versus big. But if you're saying this person against this person, it's a lopsided situation. He's not going to be able to bring out Bone Crusher and all of that. Like that ain't enough for, that's not enough to go against Diddy, man. Diddy, the Total and all that extra shit that he did.
Damn.
We're not even talking about the Mace records.
Oh damn! I didn't even think
about that. We're not talking
that.
about none of that shit. Like we're not talking about the More Money. Like we're not talking about the Life After Death album, which is basically a double album. Come on, folks. Like it's a double album, and it got Bone Thugs and Harmony on it, folks.
Oh, that's what I was just thinking of. Like, damn.
You know what I'm saying? You got 10 Crack Commandments on the shit, folks. Like, you're not really understanding like Diddy can play any of it, all of it, and then that's not talking about the No Way Out album after Big passed, which was phenomenal for Diddy and himself and certified him as a star. We're not talking about the Sting record, right? We're not talking about that. And come on, bro.
Yeah.
Like you can play.
The Benjamins alone, man.
Listen.
Oh my God.
And the joke is JD's was trying to basically say, listen, man, I produce Confessions.
It's not enough.
I produced the joint for Mariah that sold at 10 million. So he's looking at it like I got 2 diamond albums that I've produced. You know, between Usher and between Mariah Carey. And he's like, yo, I got X amount of number ones, you know? Mm-hmm. But when you put those records up against these records sonically, they ain't holding no weight. Especially in a party format. Especially in a celebration format. The record that might bang the most might be maybe like the Let's Get Married from the 112. That was 112, the Jagged Edge.
Oh, yeah, the Jagged Edge records.
Yeah, like some of those might go.
Yeah, definitely.
But because he was never really sample heavy, right?
Right.
And then the other big record was Drew Hill, the Sleeping in My Bed remix.
Yeah. He got some dope too.
He got some dope joints, man. Like, don't get me wrong.
You know what it would come down to? It would come down to which records are being played.
That's what Swiss and them trying to say.
That's what it would come down. You have to just make it would come down because. Like Diddy could have the advantage, but if he's not playing the right records to go against Diddy, then JD, then JD could win it round by round.
Right.
Like he could say, you know what, and win it round by round, and by the time you get to the end, you're like, yo, it's a game. It's like football is a game of inches. Like you want it to go round by round. You know what I'm saying?
They said they're gonna need 40 tracks, not the regular 20. So they're gonna have to need 40 tracks to double up.
Jesus Christ, that's gonna be all nighter.
Listen,
that's one of those events you
gotta
put.
You know what that does for the culture though?
That's a Saturday night.
You know what that does for the culture though, bro? That breaks the internet.
Yeah. That's a lot of decades. That's a lot of
music.
A lot of music and a lot of genres and a lot of decades because it crosses over so many years. Man, I'm for it. I'm looking for it.
Hey, man, shout out to Swiss and those guys on that Versus, man. Genius. Mm-hmm. Genius, man. Like when I say genius, behind that. So shout out to them on that, man.
Swiss Timberland, shout out. Yeah.
Word. It's the Arkatech Beatz Music Business Podcast, folks.
Yes, sir.
Check us out.
Giving you the info,
At www.arkatechbeatz.com.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you follow us on all that nice social media that people know and love.
Yep. At Arkatech Beatz.
Facebook at Arkatech Beatz online.
Mm-hmm.
We got the Facebook the group. So if you want to join the group, holler at me. But until next time.
Peace. Later.
Arkatech